Okay, we are starting up. First thing I need to start is someone to tell me my audio is working. Check, check. Is my audio working? If it's working, we're ready to go. So get in those comments and tell me, hey, Mr. Clifford, audio is up and running and we are all good. So here we go. Let's start this thing up. In 3, 2, 1. And go! Hey, econ students, this is Jacob Clifford. I am thrilled to help you guys out with microeconomics. We're going to do a 2-hour review session. It's going to be posted on my YouTube channel, so you can watch it now live, or you can come back later and watch it. And I'm going to help you cover the key skills, the key concepts, and the key graphs to make you ready for microeconomics. Again, I wanted to double check on the audio. Someone tell me audio is good. You're good. Thank you so much, Jack. I appreciate it. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat as we go, but for the most part, I'm going to jump straight into it and go from there. So, first thing, before we jump into it, a couple things I want to keep you informed about and let you know. We're doing microeconomics in this live stream. This is not macroeconomics. We're trying to help the most amount of people here. So if you ask me macro questions, I'll say, hey, the live review session tomorrow. So tomorrow is the macro live stream. So watch it tomorrow if you want macro stuff. Also, we're doing introductory econ stuff. So if you ask me about, I don't know, indifference curves or Hicks law or something that you learn later on in college, I'm not going to answer those questions because we're going to help the most amount of people, and the people who watch my videos for the most part are in an introductory econ class in college. Also, keep in mind, because so many of you are college students, I'm not really going to focus too much on the AP test in this video. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about the AP test, but I'm doing a second live stream review the weekend right before the AP test. So that's when I'll talk about the AP test, the free responses you're most likely to see, the my predictions of what's on the test, and help you specifically with that test. So that's later. I'm going to talk about microeconomics in general, again, to help out the college students. The cool thing about this is I also have a secondary camera which helps me do some graphing. We're going to call that graph, I don't know, what do you want to call this? Graph transformation, or how about, I don't know, graph mode. We'll call it graph mode. So this is graph mode, and I'll get out of graph mode. So I'll be graphing with you today as well. So keep that in mind. First thing, here's what we're going to do. First thing I want to do with you guys, before we jump into some things that I have planned, is you need them first. So first thing you're going to need is this puppy. I want you to go look inside the description right now in this video, and I want you to download the review session worksheet that we're going to be filling out. Now, I know you don't go to review sessions to do worksheets, but this is going to kind of guide our thoughts and our notes, and it's going to help you practice a few things, particularly the graphs and some other stuff. So what I want you to do right now, go to the description of this video and download that PDF, get it, and print it out on your computer as I'm setting some stuff up right here. If you're on your phone, don't freak out, you'll be fine, but I do want you to grab a piece of paper and graph along. So if I'm graphing stuff, and I'll make sure I'm not, just talking about the sheet and you can't see it. I'll make sure to show it as we actually work. In fact, I'll go into graph mode so you can see what I'm talking about. So we'll do this a lot and go into graph mode, and I'll zoom in so you can see the questions, but it's better if you can just fill the darn thing out at the same time. So go download that right now. And as we're doing that, here's what we're going to do. I want you to please call in. What? Yes, call in to me. And you can ask me some questions. A couple of rules about that. First of all, keep in mind that, make sure you're clothed and don't say bad words because we're live right here. But right now on FaceTime, I'm sorry if you don't have an Apple product, but on FaceTime, go ahead and type in info@acdcleadership.com. It'll bring you to my computer and we'll be able to see you live. Keep that in mind. You're going to be seen live. And the reason we're doing this is I want to, number one, find out your questions, like what questions you have about microeconomics. And it'll also give people time to download the study guide. So make sure you're downloading that study guide and you have that study guide up and running so we can do this. So first person who comes in is going to be the first person talking to me live on FaceTime right now. FaceTime, there's the information you need. Go grab that puppy. Let's see who's going to be the first person to call in. Along those lines, as we're waiting for somebody, I need to know if you guys are college students or if you're high school students. I bet a lot of you are college students getting ready for your final exams. for Econ 101, which is awesome. I hope you like economics. Really, of all the subjects you're learning in college and in high school, Econ really is going to be one you're going to use for the rest of your life. Economics is super, super valuable. And not just for like a major or anything, but just the concepts, particularly the idea of scarcity. So yeah, I know you're getting ready for your tests. I know you just want to pass your final exam, but in the back of your brain, file all these things under important information I want for life, because econ, hopefully you feel like it's something that's going to benefit you guys for your entire life. So first thing we need is someone to call in, and someone just did, and let's see who it is. We're connecting. I'm super sweaty. Sorry about that. Hey, hello. Who are you there? Are you there? It looks like we did not get connected. I'm so sorry to that individual. I know that's not the most ideal situation in the world. Sorry, but yeah. And by the way, this is a new system for me. I'm trying to work out all the different bugs. So you call in right now if you can. If you can't, that's okay. We can move on without people calling in because you're still downloading the packet anyways. Remember, you're downloading this thing right now, so make sure you go ahead and get that. Keep moving. Who's going to be the first person to call in, though? Come on, don't make me beg. This is weird. There we go. Now we got that guy. Hello? He's coming in. Let me move this over here so you have something to look at. Hello, are you there? Can you hear me? No, you know what? I don't know. This maybe isn't working the way we actually wanted. It worked last year. Hello? Okay. Hello, are you there? Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you. I can hear me over your phone. Go ahead and turn off your audio. Oh, man. We had a shot on that one. Okay, we're going to do this one more time. The idea here, there's the same dude. Okay, are you there? Can you hear me? Do you use FaceTime? Have you ever done this before? Let's find out. Here we go. We got to move. We got things to do. Can you hear me? Okay, so what we're going to do is this. I'm going to jump into the review despite having people call in because no one actually called in. So I apologize to Ronnie and some other people who didn't get a chance to do it. So I apologize. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, right now, if you didn't already do so, get this bad boy downloaded in the description below. Let's start talking about microeconomics and jump into some of the details of this class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this thing out. All the answers are included as well. So it's actually, it's 6 pages long, 3 pages that are blank, 3 pages with the actual answers. I'm going to turn off FaceTime. So don't FaceTime me anymore. Sorry, we had our chance. It didn't work out. I'm sorry. I guess that's the downside of this stuff, going live. All right, here we go. So the first thing I want you to know about this document you have, this is trying to put in some of the things that students ask me most often, like, hey, can you review this? You cover this concept. And they're most likely the things that are on the actual test. Please don't call me anymore. Sorry, no more. We're good. Okay, so whether you're in college or you're in high school, you're still going to see the same sort of questions from your teachers and professors. The first thing you're going to see on your final exam is always a question about scarcity, because scarcity is the most important concept in microeconomics and macroeconomics. And again, by the way, this worksheet that we have is not really like a worksheet that I want you like writing like your answers like it would be for the actual like a test or something like that. But they're just like quick reminders. So if you know scarcity, cool, you don't need to write it out. But I'm going to write it out because I can, because I'm here. So scarcity is the idea we have unlimited wants and limited resources. So unlimited wants, limited resources. Now, I know that you didn't go to this live review to watch me fill out a piece of paper. I promise you, as we go further, it's going to get crazier. We got some graphs and other things we're going to draw. But you get the idea what we're doing. I apologize for my crappy handwriting. Okay. Opportunity cost, we already know, is the most important single concept for helping you in life to make decisions. Opportunity cost is the next best alternative whenever you make the choice. So the next best alternative, you're going to see 2 questions on your test. Alternative. You're going to see 2 questions, no doubt about it. We're going to decline all these. Here, I'm going to turn the audio off. Okay. Make sure you can still hear me. Actually, really quickly, just give me a okay if you can hear me. I want to make sure we're good. So just in the comments, say, hey, we can still hear you. Okay. Anyways, so opportunity cost is the next best alternative, and that's a huge concept that you absolutely need to know. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is you're going to see a question on your final on it. Every teacher, everywhere, every professor always asks you a question about scarcity and a question about opportunity cost. An opportunity cost question might be more engaging than just the definition. So they'll say, they'll give you a scenario where someone goes off to college and it asks what's the opportunity cost of them going to college, and it's the traveling they could have done, or the money they could have, the resources and things they could have purchased instead of buying tuition, right? So get it, you're done, perfect. Okay, economic systems. Economic systems is basically the idea of free market capitalism and centrally planned economic systems. They have 3 different questions. The 3 questions are what to produce, and what. So I'm not writing them out. So what to produce, how to produce it, and then who gets it. So the basic idea of an economy and how it's organized comes down to what are we going to make and who decides that. In the free market system, businesses and individuals, right, decide what they want to make. How are we going to make it, right? In the centrally planned system, obviously, the government's deciding, and then who ends up getting it and how do we distribute those resources. In the free market system, it's based on price. Price is how we decide who gets what, and that's the system that we got, okay? All right, good. People said I'm good on audio. All right, again, I know I'm rushing through this first part in the unit, and I'm doing it for a reason. Basically, I'm not stalling, but I'm getting some people time to download this thing so we're up and running. One of the things you're going to see on the test as well in Unit 1 is the idea of the production possibilities curve. You know what it is. It's easy, but just keep that in mind. If you're reviewing, make sure you got that because you want to get the easy questions right. On this one at the very top, it says, use the graphs below for the countries of Econ land and Cliffordia to show the difference between a constant cost and increasing opportunity cost on these. So if you remember this idea, constant opportunity cost for cars and trucks, because they have similar resources. Like if you have a factory that's making cars, it's not that hard to switch it over to trucks, I'm assuming. I don't know, I've never produced a truck before. But the idea is there is some constant opportunity cost. Each truck you produce is a car you gave up. Right? Another truck you produce is a car or 2 cars that you gave up. But it's got a constant opportunity cost. Because these 2 resources for the products are very similar. Now, for cars and corn, very different resources, right? One requires a lot of land and one requires a lot of capital. And so you have is a bowed out curve, which has the law of increasing opportunity cost. As you produce more and more corn, the first amount of corn you produce doesn't cost you very much cars, but the more corn you produce, it's going to cost you more and more cars. And so that's the curve you normally see. Know the difference between these. You're going to see an easy question on that. And of course, know the difference between a point A on the curve, point B on the curve, and a point C on the curve. A is the idea that there's inefficiency or there's unemployment, or we're not using all of our resources to the fullest. B is actually using all of our resources, and C is impossible given our current resources. Again, I know you know this stuff. I know you review this stuff. This is easy for you. Okay, how about this? How about comparative advantage? How good are you at comparative advantage? Now, I'm not covering these concepts in detail right now per se because 1, I already made a bunch of videos on it, and 2, I just don't have the time. I'm just getting some concepts back in your brain, particularly the ones in each one of the units that are either the trickiest or the ones that are probably most likely on your test. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, number 1, the production possibilities curve is not like something that actual economies and actual economists draw. Like no one in the world has ever been like, oh, okay, where are we on our curve? Like that's not a thing. It's just a concept that shows you the idea of scarcity, right? We have limited resources, and so if you want to produce corn, you got to give up something to produce it. It also shows you opportunity costs. So make sure you can calculate if you have movement along this curve from, let's say, point B to point D, you can say, okay, movement from B to C or B to D is the lost cars that we gave up. So be able to do that and I basically be able to see how these concepts of scarcity and opportunity costs are inside this one graph, and that's why you're actually learning it. And it's the same thing with comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is one of those things where, no country trades cars for trucks. That's not a thing, but the idea is true, and comparative advantage helps us understand concepts. So let me back out here on this one. It basically says There's Econ Land and another third country, Scarcityville. They produce cars and trucks. And it first asks you, and here's what you're going to see on your test, a question about absolute advantage and then a question about comparative advantage. And it's important to know the difference, totally different concepts. Which country has an absolute advantage in the production of cars? Now do me a favor, as we're doing this, talk to the actual screen out loud. Like talk out loud on the screen. It'll help you understand the concepts and it'll help you review and stay engaged. So which country has an absolute advantage in the production of cars? Huh? Okay. Well, who can produce more cars? That's what it's saying is Econ Land. Now the AP test and your college final usually ask why. So Econ Land because they can produce more cars, right? So 2 is greater than 1. Okay, done. Now, comparative advantage isn't that easy. Now, if you've seen my comparative advantage section of the Unit 1 summary, I gave you something called the quick and dirty, which is a really easy way, a strategy to get the right answer every single time. But even if you don't know that, that's okay. You still should be able to do the regular way of calculating this, which requires the actual calculation of per unit opportunity cost. Per unit opportunity cost, how much does one cost? Now, you could, the idea here is, we know each one of the cars costs Econ Land 4 trucks. So each 2 cars cost 4 trucks. And for Scarcityville, each 1 car costs 5 trucks. But that doesn't help us compare the two. We want to be able to figure out, okay, let's put them in like terms. So what you do is you calculate something called per unit opportunity cost. Again, you've seen my videos on this, so I'm going pretty quick. If you know that you need to go back and review this, then go back and review this. Let me get so it's focused. So 1 car, I'm going to put equals, or costs a certain number of trucks, in this case 2 trucks. And 1 car for Scarcityville costs 5 trucks. Now, that alone, it gives you, now they're in like terms, you can compare, okay, who should be producing cars? Well, the country who has the lower opportunity cost. Now, on the right-hand side, let's do the calculation over here. 1 truck costs 1/2 a car that Econ Land could have produced. That's their opportunity cost. And 1 truck over here costs Scarcityville 1/5 of a car that they could have produced that they can't produce if they're producing trucks. Now, next step, and this is why it's a little trickier because you have to actually do the calculation and then make a decision on who should produce what. Who should be producing cars? The one that gives up 2 trucks or the one that gives up 5 trucks? Well, clearly the one that gives up 2 trucks. So I circle this, and circling it means that's the country that should produce the cars. Right over here, who should produce the trucks? The one that gives up 1/2 a car, the one that gives up 1/5 of a car. The one that gives up 1/5 of the car, they have a lower opportunity cost. So to answer the question, which country has a comparative advantage in production of cars? Well, this one is Econ Land because they have a lower opportunity cost, and a lower opportunity cost means you have a comparative advantage. So it's that simple, done, there it is. Now, again, this is microeconomics. You might actually not see a question on comparative advantage because maybe your teacher doesn't teach that in much detail. It's kind of a macro concept a lot of times, but it might be like individuals. Instead of a country, it's like Billy and Sally are mowing the lawn and doing dishes or something like that. This, by the way, is an output question. If you saw my video before, there's 2 types of these kind of questions. There's output questions and input questions, so make sure that you know the difference between the 2. All right, so really quick, let's transition out of graph mode and let's talk to you guys. First of all, I hope this is helping so far. I hear people talking on, yeah, I love it. So somebody asked about terms of trade. I see you guys in the chat. Terms of trade is the next level up in terms of difficulty. It's identifying how many cars should they trade for how many trucks. Now, I know I wasn't going to talk about the AP test, but the AP test doesn't really ask terms of trade questions on the microeconomics exam. So if you're only doing micro, don't worry about it. You're fine. You got the main concept. Understand how to do comparative advantage. If you're doing macro, make sure you can do terms of trade as well. Now, I have, like I said, videos that explain that. So there you go. I'm looking at you guys in the comments, by the way. Anyways, that was Unit 1. Unit 1 is such basic stuff. In Unit 1, you also see the circular flow model. So you'll see questions like, what do businesses do in the product market or the resource market? And that's important things to know. Again, people are asking about terms of trade. Again, I'm not covering terms of trade. This is microeconomics. I'm not going to spend time on it, but I did make a video explaining it. There's a comparative advantage practice video where I explain how to do terms of trade. You can go to that video when you're done watching this video and go watch the second half. That'll help you. We're going to go move and talk about supply and demand. So we're switching gears, and let's go over to the graph mode. And here we go. Scroll on down. Again, for people who are just showing up, keep in mind what we're doing here is you're downloading the little practice study guide thing that I have in the description below in this video. Download that thing and print it out. If you're on your phone, that's okay, not the end of the world. But ideally, you're actually filling these things out. Now, here's the one biggest mistake any student ever makes in economics class is they watch the teacher, me, do something and they think, oh, I can do it. I got that. That's easy. I can draw that graph. Right now, if you don't have this thing printed out, that's okay. I need you at the very least take out a blank piece of paper and start drawing these graphs. So draw out these graphs right now because you're going to need to practice, particularly the thing I'm about to show you. I'm going to go pretty quick, as always, but I want you to draw along with me and try your best. Also, if you have some, try to grab some different colors of something and get those things up and running because we're going to identify consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss, which are some big concepts that you need in your microeconomics class. Now, also keep in mind, the beginning part, everything I just did right here is the exact same stuff that you would do in a macroeconomics class. So there is some economies of scale that you would get when you take both courses. So if you take microeconomics and then you take macroeconomics, so if you're taking macro second semester college students, keep in mind that whole first unit is exactly the same for the most part. But once you start getting in supply and demand, they start getting a little different, a little more dicey, particularly in microeconomics. So here we go. What it says in the very top is, use the demand and supply model to draw each of the following. Label the equilibrium price PE, the new price P1, equilibrium quantity QE, and the new quantity Q1. And lastly, identify consumer and producer surplus with these different colors and deadweight loss if it exists. So that's what we're going to do right now for each one of these scenarios. And the reason why I'm doing this, to tell you right now, the reason I'm doing this is because when you see them all next to each other, hopefully it's going to have you go, oh. And keep also in mind that if you are like not paying attention to your class, you can't do any of this stuff yet. So don't even try watching this video yet. Make sure you learn this stuff and then you can go back and review. So here we go. What we're going to do is jump into each one of these things. Make sure it's all set up here. There we go. Let's start off with, it just says equilibrium. So let's put a price and quantity. AP teachers and college professors are kind of weird about this. Make sure you do your labeling properly. You miss points for dumb little things. So you got a downward sloping demand curve, an upward sloping supply for reasons I'm not going to bother explaining right now, but you know what they look like. And over, we got a price that said equilibrium and a quantity equilibrium. Everybody knows this graph. You get the concept. Do you understand the idea of equilibrium? Cool, awesome. Do you understand the idea of consumer and producer surplus? The idea that, let's just say this price is 10 for whatever this is. Somebody was willing to pay 90, but they didn't pay 90, they paid 10. And that's consumer surplus. And the next person, some other person was willing to pay 80 and they paid 10. So if you calculated all these things, you'd come up with a triangle, which is right there, which is the consumer surplus. Easy, you get it. That's consumer surplus. The difference between what you're willing to pay for something and you actually did. Now, what about this person right here? What about the person who is willing to buy it for, let's say, $6? Well, guess what? You don't get it. Remember we talked about earlier about economic systems. Who gets the products? Well, you got to be able to pay the price. Price is how we allocate resources. It's the idea of, the idea of price helps us figure out people's relative value and helps us allocate, okay, who should get whatever this is. Producer surplus also exists. Producer surplus is the idea someone's willing to sell it for like $2. Some low-cost producer's like, I'm willing to sell this for $2. Let's keep it simple and say it's pizza, easy example. So a pizza is $10. Some guy out there is like, listen, I'll sell pizzas for $2. But they don't have to sell it for $2 because the equilibrium price is 10. So that's producer surplus right there for them. Somebody else is willing to sell it for $5 and they can sell it for 10. And that keeps going on all the way up, and that's producer surplus. You got it. You know what it looks like. Done. What about that high-cost producer? What about that guy who's producing pizza, but it costs him $12 to produce it? Well, he doesn't sell it. So all of these sellers don't make a sale, and all these consumers don't actually get the product. We end up at this spot where consumer surplus and producer surplus are maximized. And for this one, I'm just going to label them consumer surplus and producer surplus. That's easy. I know you know it, but then it starts getting tricky when we start adding taxes and externalities and ceilings and floors and all these different things. So let's start practicing first with an easier one. Let's just go do a regular supply and demand shift question. So going back to the equilibrium, price, quantity, downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. There's your quantity equilibrium, and here's your price at equilibrium. Here's what I want you to remember. It's really easy. I know sometimes, depending on your, a lot of college professors are amazing, and they're really good at explaining things, and hopefully that's the kind you have, but sometimes you get ones that don't explain things very well, and it gets more complicated than it needs to be. It's really easy. There's only 4 things that can happen, really. Demand can go up, demand can go down, supply can go up, or supply can go down. That's it. And then just read the graph. The graph tells you actually what happened. Did price go up? Did quantity go up? What happened? In this case, it says supply decreased. The reason I'm doing that example is because that's the most missed example on anyone's test. And that's the one that college professors will throw at you, right? When supply decreases, a lot of people go, decrease. So it fell, right? It fell. No! Did not fall. A supply decrease is a shift to the left. So I'll label that S1. Always add an arrow as well. So yeah, supply decreased. At every single price people decided to buy less. Sorry, my bad. At every single price, people decided to produce less and supply decrease. Now, the AP test or the college test you're about to take won't usually say just draw a supply decrease. They'll give you a scenario. So they'll say this is pizza and there's an increase in the cost of ovens and oven prices have increased. Okay, and then that'll decrease the supply. Or labor being the best example. There's it costs more for labor. Okay, the supply of pizzas is going to decrease. Now, you're not done. Of course, finish off the labeling. So we'll dot that over, call that P1, dot that down, and Q1. Now, remember what we're doing here is we're identifying consumer and producer surplus. So do we have consumer surplus, producer surplus, and label that deadweight loss? Okay, go ahead and do that right now. Label consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss. You got it? You got it? Good, because there is no deadweight loss. If you're drawing a little triangle of deadweight loss, you don't understand deadweight loss. Deadweight loss exists when we're not producing the quantity socially optimal. There is no deadweight loss in this situation. We have a consumer surplus, which got smaller than before, right? So if you compare these two graphs next to each other, which makes sense. When the price goes up, the difference between what I'm willing to pay and what I did pay gets smaller because the price goes up. So now the price is up at, let's say, 12 for a pizza. So now there's some less consumer surplus. The producer surplus is right here, right? The difference between what people are willing to pay, and they did pay. So there's your producer surplus, which is right here. And there is no deadweight loss because society wants Q1. This is the quantity socially optimal at Q1. All we had was just a shift in the curve. So no deadweight loss in the situation. And we're still at equilibrium. Keep that in mind as well. We're at equilibrium. We're just at a new equilibrium than we were before. But that's not what can happen here. In these two questions, we have disequilibrium. We're not at equilibrium. Okay, so right now what I want you to do is draw a price ceiling and draw a price floor as I drink this water. It's not like milk. Go ahead and draw, though, on your graph. I know I'm doing a lot of the work for you. Again, right now, you draw it for yourself. I want you to identify the new price and the new quantity, just like it tells you, and then try to figure out the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss. Woo! I'm excited. Man, I love doing micro. We got macro tomorrow for people tuning in. Keep in mind, macroeconomics we're going to cover tomorrow. Some people are so weird in the comments. As you're working, I'm going to talk to you guys. Some people are so weird. Mr. Clifford, my pee-pee. Oh, that's so silly. You're so silly. Okay. Silly. Okay. So right now, you should not be typing in the comments. You should be actually graphing. So let's graph this thing. All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Let's do it. We're going to start with the price ceiling. We've got price, we've got quantity, you got demand and supply. Man, you'll draw this graph a whole lot. If you're an econ major, get used to drawing this graph. You're going to draw it a whole lot. Dot, dot, dot over here, PE, and dot, 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 QE. Now, what happens? Which curve shifts? Is it demand or supply? Well, it's neither. There is no shift when there is a ceiling. Remember, ceiling is the idea there's a cap on the price. So we're keeping the price from going any higher, right? So there's a cap on the price. Now that means a ceiling is the opposite of where you actually think it would go. A lot of people go, oh, a ceiling goes on top. Nah, a ceiling goes below. A price ceiling, which I'll label PC, is a cap on the price. So if the price is normally $10 for pizza, the government is saying, okay, you can't let the price go over $5 for pizza. There is the cap on prices. If you have a cap or a price ceiling above equilibrium, it has no effect. So a price ceiling at $50 for pizza has no effect on the market. There's no change in supply or demand, and there's no change in consumer producer surplus. There's no deadweight loss. If you have a non-binding price ceiling. In this case, it's binding. The price ceiling is binding, or at least I want you to assume it was binding. Let's finish the labeling. This one was P1, right? So I labeled it PC, but that's P1 because that's the new price, right? The new quantity is either here or here. One of these two is a new quantity. Now, if you're thinking like, whoa, but there's two quantities. Yeah, there's a shortage. Yeah, I know that. But which one is the new quantity representing bought and sold? The number of units that people actually bought and sold. Well, it's right here. Q1 is right there. Q1 is the idea that, yes, this is how many units were produced. Sure, people wanted more, but they didn't get them, right? So where is consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss? The easy one first to see is the idea of producer surplus. That is this right here. Producer surplus is clearly smaller than it was before. Like if you go back and look over here, less producer surplus, which makes sense. The government is keeping the prices artificially low. What about that consumer surplus? Well, you're tempted to be like, oh, it's a big area up here. Well, keep in mind, these consumers who bought this, right, nobody beyond Q1, no one beyond Q1 actually got any of this. So you can't have consumer surplus for units that no one consumed. So consumer surplus is the difference between what people were willing to pay and what they did pay all the way down right here. There's your consumer surplus in this case. In this case, we actually do have deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is this triangle here. Deadweight loss is lost inefficiency or units that could have been purchased by people who actually wanted them, but they couldn't because something got involved, whether it's a tax or a ceiling or a floor or a monopoly or something else happening. So if we back out a little bit and you see these side by side, this should help you. Ignore this one, but look at these two next to each other. You can see what's going on. When the government keeps that quantity low by keeping an artificially low price and producers can't or don't want to produce more units, you end up with some inefficiency here. That inefficiency of deadweight loss is a huge concept in a microeconomics class. You see it so many times. You're going to see it here, floors. You're going to see it again with taxes and negative externalities, positive externalities. You're going to see it with monopolies, with different types of monopolies. You're going to see it all over the place. Get used to this idea of deadweight loss. Okay, that being said, right here, let's go take a look at what a floor looks like. And since you can draw this ceiling, you got an idea what a floor looks like. You got this, man. So we've got price, we got quantity, downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. I'm getting a little sloppy with my graphing. I'm sorry. It's also a weird angle. Price at equilibrium, quantity at equilibrium. All right. So that's where we started. Where does a floor go? Well, a binding floor goes right here. We're going to call that PF, which we're also calling P1, right? That's what we wanted to label it. All right, two quantities. In this case, we have not a shortage, but a surplus. There's more units that producers want to produce than the units that consumers actually want to buy. This represents the new quantity Q1. Yes, producers want to produce more, but this is representing the quantity bought and sold. So what happens here? Well, consumer surplus clearly gets smaller than it was all the way back there, right? Less consumer surplus. Why? Well, because with the government keeping the price artificially high, keeping a floor on the prices, preventing the price from going down. So if the government says, listen, you can't, the price can't go any lower than $15 for pizza, that would mean, in this case, consumer surplus would be lower, right? There'd be a higher price. You would think producers would benefit, and they might. Producers might benefit, and that producer surplus is right here. But whether they do or they don't benefit, there's going to be some deadweight loss. And so total surplus falls. And that deadweight loss is that triangle. Notice in both cases, quantity falls. Whether it's a floor or a ceiling, we've got less quantity. There they are. Next door to each other, it makes more sense when you see them that way. You're like, yeah, okay. So notice disequilibrium. Before we had equilibrium, now we're at disequilibrium. In this case, we've got a shortage, and in this case over here, we've got a surplus. Does it make sense? Sweet! So let's move on. Gains from trade. You probably wouldn't even know what I'm getting at right here if you didn't watch this video and you try to fill this out on your own. I'm trying to get the idea of the idea that if we buy other goods and services from other countries at a lower world price. So if you've heard that term world price, it's part of in your college class or your AP class. It's welfare economics, like the benefit of buying different things. It'll make sense once we do it. So here's price and here's quantity. We got supply and demand again. Demand and supply, and then dot over. We've got price at equilibrium. Dot down. We've got quantity at equilibrium. So the idea is this. We made up some random number. The price was 10 for pizza. Let's say instead of having a price ceiling, right? We're not doing a ceiling. Instead, let's say that we can go get pizza at a different country at a way cheaper price, and pizza can travel and it doesn't go bad, and you get the idea, for example. But for this purposes, let's say you can go and buy pizza from another country at a significantly lower price, which we'll call pizza TR for pizza with trade. P1, it's the price we're doing. Now I'm going to draw a horizontal line again, right? But I want to point out this is not the same as a ceiling. If you're thinking like, oh, it's a ceiling again. No! This is not the government saying, listen, you can't charge above $5 for pizza. This is saying we're buying pizza from another country at $5, a lower price. So that means consumer and producer surplus and deadweight loss are going to look different. Question is, do you know where they are? Can you label on that graph consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss? Can you do it? Well, do it as I have another drink of water. And if you don't have your graph out because you have a phone and you're not doing it, at least mentally think of where it might be. All right. First, consumer surplus. Let's do producer surplus first. Who loses from international trade, right? Like who is the person who is least likely to support international trade among other countries? Well, it's domestic producers. Producers in the country that's getting traded with, they don't want trade because then they have to deal with these really low-cost producers in other countries. So producer surplus is clearly smaller. What about consumer surplus? Well, yes, just like before, willing to pay, did pay. We got quantity. We got to make sure to draw quantity. The quantity is actually here. Ooh, yeah, right? This is the quantity we produced in our own country. I'll put Q2 for simplicity. Q2 is what we're producing in our own country. But Q1 is what we actually got with the trade, right? So this shortage that would normally exist is what we gained by, by trade. We produced this ourselves, and we got the rest from other countries. So that means willing to pay, did pay, willing to pay, did pay. Willing to pay, did pay, and the person who didn't get it before trade now can get it at a lower price. And so can these people. All these individuals all can get the good at that lower price. Now, obviously, it gets more complicated than that in real life, like actual international trade and countries and should they trade and who should you trade with and how should you trade in foreign exchange markets. But for a microeconomics class, particularly in the beginning, Econ 101 class and your AP class, we keep it simple to start. What I'm trying to show, though, with these graphs so far is notice how these might look the same to the untrained eye. And by the way, there's no deadweight loss. But these might look the same to the untrained eye. And people go, oh, yeah, it's like the same thing. There's a line, there's another line. You can't memorize lines. Like, you're not memorizing stuff in your micro class. You're understanding this stuff in your micro class. Does that make sense what I'm talking about? Okay, let's jump over to excise taxes. So excise taxes, I made a video on this one, deep in the heart of Texas. The excise tax, this one, again, what I'm leaving out here in Unit 2, because that's what we're talking about, Unit 2, is the idea of elasticity. I made a really good video that talks about elasticity, how to calculate the elasticity demand coefficient. Excise taxes depend a lot on the elasticity, in other words, the steepness, for lack of a better term, of a demand or supply curve. For our purposes, let's just draw them at 45-degree angles, just to keep things really simple to see consumer and producer surplus. But it does get more complicated, and you're going to need to do a lot more than just draw the graph. But I think this is a good introduction for that. We got price, we got quantity, we got demand and supply. Now, in the other review session I'm actually going to do some examples of this. We're actually calculating them. So we'll actually have it, instead of you drawing it, I'll have it pre-drawn. You have to identify consumer and producer surplus. Also, you have to be able to calculate these things. So let me switch gears. You have to be able to calculate this area of a triangle. Now, area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So depending on your class and your professor, if you did it in class, you got to be able to do it on your test. Which reminds me, you might not know this. So I didn't learn this until maybe my third year in college. Here's how it works, particularly econ teachers. If your teacher says something 3 times, like if they say, here's how to calculate consumer surplus, and they show it to you again and show it to you again, that's going to be on your final exam. I promise you 100%. If they say, scarcity is unlimited wants, but limited resources, and they say it 3 times, that's on your final exam. I promise you. You hear it 2 times, that's on your exam. Teachers and professors have a tendency to repeat things. They know it's on the test, so people can't say, well, you never said that in class. That was never ever said, and so therefore it won't be on the test. So in most cases, if you hear something repeated over and over again, put a check mark next to it. That's definitely the way you're going to see. So I'm bringing that up in college. Keep that in mind for all your professors and all your subjects, just how it is. You hear them repeat it, there's a reason for that. All right, here we go. Excise tax. Here's the quantity equilibrium. Here's the regular price at equilibrium. What I want you to notice on this one is the difference between the graph we drew above it and what we're about to see. Like, I'm doing this for a reason. These 2 graphs are going to look similar, but they're going to look totally, completely different. And why? Well, let's find out. Well, first of all, an excise tax is a tax on producers. If you've covered the concept, it's a per unit tax, which affects the average variable cost and the average total cost, concepts you learn in Unit 3. The idea, though, is going to decrease the supply because it decreases the amount producers can produce, or it increases the marginal cost, if you know what I'm talking about. The point is, though, producers can produce less stuff, giving us a new price, boom, 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 P1, down, and Q1. If you know this and you've seen this in your class, awesome. If you haven't seen this yet, you're going to freak out on what I'm about to show you. Because you might go, oh, yeah, okay, just like before, we've got consumer surplus and producer surplus. Done. No. Before we had 2 people involved in the transaction, consumers and producers, and that's where we have consumer and producer surplus. But now we have 3 people involved in the transaction. We've got consumers and producers and the government. The government puts a tax wedge in between them. So, first thing, let's do compare the consumer surplus. So the consumer surplus is going to be right here. That's the difference between what they wanted to pay and what they did pay with the new price. Nothing new there. That's easy. We got that. You feel comfortable with that. Producer surplus, let's hold up that for a second. First of all, let's go do the tax box, the tax wedge. Let's just say, and I'm making up a number, this is a $4 tax, right? And so that vertical distance between the supply curves is the amount of the shift. So this vertical distance is 4, and then you got a dot over this box right here. 4 times whatever quantity that is represents the amount of money that's going to the government. This is the tax revenue that goes to the government. It doesn't go to consumers, and it doesn't go to producers. Yes, consumers paid this higher price. Let's just say $12. Yeah, they paid $12, and they used to pay $10, but the producers don't get to keep all that money, right? The government gets a portion. That means the producer surplus is down here, right? Now, if I threw in some numbers, I could show you some concepts. Again, if this price was 10, price went up by 12, and the price producers received fell to 8, that would represent that 4 per unit tax that goes to the government. Now, I'm not done, though, because what do we have? Yeah, say it with me, seriously. Deadweight loss. Yes, we've got deadweight loss, which is right here. This is lost consumer and producer surplus because we're not producing the quantity socio-optimal. Again, look at the difference between that top one and the bottom one. Okay? Notice how this one, the quantity socio-optimal, was here. That means there is no deadweight loss. Society just produced less output because the cost of ovens, the cost of labor went up, and now we're producing less pizza. Okay, in this situation, if the government got involved, causing supply to shift over, this quantity is the quantity socially optimal. That's super important. Keep in mind, the ones I'm circling are the quantity socially optimal. If society wants this produced, and the government taxes this, causing supply to shift over, that's going to lead to some deadweight loss. Now, the size of the deadweight loss depends on the elasticity of that demand and supply curve. So the more elastic the demand curve, in this case, the less deadweight loss. But you should be able to connect taxes to elasticity later on. And again, I'm going to cover elasticity in the next video that I'll be making as well. Okay, so let's transition out of graph mode for a second. How you guys feeling? You guys doing okay? We are, we're 44 minutes into this thing. It turned out, if you were in the beginning, we tried to do a video thing where people called in. It did not work. It was a total horrible bomb. It was disgusting. I see people saying, oh, so Mr. Clifford, I love you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I'm listening. I'm stopping for a second so I can read some of you guys' your comments. You guys are spending a lot more time in the comments than you should be. This is so great. Mr. Clifford is so cool. Listen, that's what I'm looking for. Mr. Clifford, I'm getting bullied out here. Yeah, don't take bulliers. That's lame. Mr. Yeager's micro class from El Paso. Woo! I know him for sure. This is great. No, seriously though, that actually helps me and motivates me because don't forget it. I'm literally talking by myself to myself in my office. Like literally, like it seems like I'm engaging and talking to you guys, but really, I'm just talking to myself. So having a little bit of feedback is kind of nice. Okay, it says really helpful for sure. That means we can keep going. Okay, let's go back to graph mode. Here we go. So now we're in graph mode. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to draw something that goes right here, negative and positive externalities. Now, I know, and you should know as well, these are Unit 6 concepts. These are concepts you learn at the very end of the class when you learn about market failures. I'm throwing them here to help you realize that supply and demand, dude, is just supply and demand. Also, to compare the two graphs you just drew earlier, these two in particular, you'll see that this graph looks similar but different, and you're going to find out why. And it all comes down to consumer and produced surplus. So right now, what I want you to do is draw a negative externality. Label the equilibrium price and quantity. And if you can as well, label that quantity socially optimal. And if you can do it, go for consumer and producer surplus and deadweight loss. Do you know how to draw this graph? And do you understand this graph? There's such a difference between being able to draw it and do you fully understand what the heck it's actually talking about? Let's do it together. Price, quantity, downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply, over. There's the price at equilibrium, down. There's the quantity at equilibrium. There it is. All right, so negative externality. So first of all, this demand curve, we'll just say is the marginal social benefit. This supply curve is the marginal private cost, which introduces a concept, again, you learn it in Unit 6, the idea that that supply curve represents the cost to individual firms, factoring out all additional social costs, the costs that hurt the local river or that pollute the air. These are not factoring those in because a business doesn't factor those things in, right? They look at the cost to themselves. So there should be not a second supply curve, but a second cost curve. This is the marginal social cost when you factor in all these additional costs to society, not just the cost of producing and labor costs, but also the cost of pollution that other people have to pay, and that's why it's called an externality. These are external costs on some other people or society at large. Now notice, I want to point out real quick, in this case over here, arrow. In this case over here, arrow. In this case over here, no arrow. This is not a shift. These are two separate cost curves, marginal private cost and marginal social cost. We've got two new quantities. This quantity here is the quantity socially optimal. This quantity here is the price, not quantity. The price is price P1. This quantity socially optimal, I'll circle, is the quantity society actually wants. Question is, where is consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss? Now, consumer surplus and producer surplus, we know where they are. They're the same as before in the very beginning. I want to focus more on the deadweight loss to help you understand that concept. So just focusing on deadweight loss here. When you see this, you're tempted to be like, okay, this looks just like that. Deadweight loss must be that triangle because that would make sense. But it doesn't make sense. Society does not want QE, right? Society wants QSO. If society wants this quantity, that means we're not producing, in this case, too little. We're producing too much in the free market. The free market, which is producing here, is not producing the right quantity. It's inefficient. It's not allocating resources appropriate. So what that means is these amount, right? This cost is greater than that benefit. For each one of these, the cost of society is greater than the benefit. Those units should never have been produced with this externality existing. So that right there is the area of dead weight loss. Dead weight loss is not there. It's right there. Now, the reason why I'm showing this to you, and again, I could draw if you want the consumer and producer surplus. Consumer surplus and producer surplus would look just like this. I'm going to leave it off. But I want you to understand the idea here that these units should never have been made because this quantity is the quantity that the free market is making, which is a wrong quantity. They actually want this. Society wants that. Now, I gave this tip on my other videos. One of the tricks that I like to do to show people this idea of deadweight loss, it's like an arrow. So I add a little box here. Do you see how it looks like this? This arrow, if you think of deadweight loss,
and it helps you if you need help on the graphing. It points to socially optimal. In this case, society wanted that. In this case, society wanted that. Society wants this, and society wants this, so that points to it it's like, hey, point this way or point that. It tells you. In this case, society wanted this, and the arrow says, okay, we wanted more. In this case, but in this one, society wants less. Society's like, listen, we are producing too much output. Society wants less. We should be producing less of this stuff because there's additional cost on society. Cool. Now, if you can do that, that means you can, do a positive externality. Positive externality, you got price. You got quantity. Draw it with me. Demand and supply, ... over price at equilibrium, quantity at equilibrium. Again, now I'm leaving out consumer and produced surplus, but the idea here, this supply curve, so this supply curve is the marginal social cost, which is equal to marginal private cost. And this demand curve is the marginal private benefit, the benefit to individuals that are willing to pay, based on the benefit to them, not benefit to society. If they did factor in that benefit, if they factor in the positive external benefits to other individuals, there would be a second curve, which represents the marginal social benefit. They factor these things in, the benefit to other people. This quantity, which we'll call Q1, is the amount, in this case, let's do quantity socially optimal. I'm going to circle it because quantity socially optimal is important. Society wants this amount. What are we doing? We're underproducing. The free market is not producing enough. For simplicity and for keep things simple, I'm going to put P1 there too. Price isn't as important with a negative positive externalities. But the idea here is this. Society is producing QE, but society wants, if you were to factor in the benefits to other people in your decision making, want more. So there is deadweight loss right there. And which direction is it pointing? Well, you got it, pointing to the right. It's saying we want more output. These units, the benefit outweighs the cost. Society's like, we want more. Please make more when you factor in those additional benefits. Put a little thing right here to show you. Society is saying, hey, produce more. We want to produce more. Okay? Now, that was like the craziest supply and demand breakdown I've ever done with them all next to each other. And again, somebody who just came to the video and started watching at this point would be like, what? Somebody who's never taken a microeconomics class would look at this and be like, dude, you can never learn that. That is so hard. Dude, it's really not that complicated. It really isn't. It's all the same model with different variations showing different concepts. What gets tricky a lot of times, particularly when professors write questions, is they don't just say, draw a negative externality. They'll give a scenario. They'll be like, producer X produces some product for a market that causes local pollution in a local waterway, blah, 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 blah. And so don't say draw a negative externality, but you have to understand the idea and then connect the externality and then be able to understand other concepts that go along with it as well. One of the things I want to point out, again, I didn't do every single supply and demand possible thing that's available, but I did most of them. I didn't do a demand increase or demand decrease or a supply increase. I just basically did one shift there, but you should understand how to shift the curves. I also didn't do a subsidy, which is the opposite of a tax, right, where supply increases and shifts to the right. I didn't do, there's several things that are missing, but these are the basic ones you're going to see in a college class introductory microeconomics class. So this is the basics. You got to know these ones. Again, remember, these two, if you, by the way, are like reviewing, but you're not done with the course and you're like, what the crap are these? These are in Unit 6. These are usually taught later on, at least in my videos. I teach these later on. We come back and talk about market failures and the free market actually is not doing what society actually wants. Okay? Leaving graphing mode, back to looking at Mr. Clifford mode. Hey, I hope you guys are enjoying this process. Do I have a good lighting? I think so. I hope you guys are enjoying the process. I hope this is beneficial. We just hit the 54-minute mark. For the people who just showed up, keep in mind there is a link in the description. What you got to do is download the live stream review that packet that I have here. It's not really a packet. It's just 3 worksheets, and it has answers down there. We're practicing some of the graphs, and we're practicing doing some of the calculations. We're going to move into the harder units right now, so I'm going to try and maybe slow down and cover these things. But these, Unit 3 and Unit 4, where things get the most tricky. I also want to read some of you guys' comments. First of all, if I didn't already say you, I didn't say it. Thank you. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you so much for watching these videos. Do me a favor, if you didn't already do so, please subscribe. A lot of times people come to my videos and watch them only, just to pass a test. But I promise you, I'm going to make a whole lot more videos. In fact, one of the things I want to start off by saying is I haven't made a lot of videos lately, and the reason why is because I've been really busy making resources for teachers and for students because the AP curriculum is changing. And so I've been like I've never worked so hard in my entire life making all these different resources. So just keep that in mind. I don't just post a bunch of exam prep stuff. I also post like fun econ related other videos, econ movies and other things. So do me a favor, please subscribe if you didn't already do so. It would be helpful to me, and it tells YouTube I'm doing a good job. So that said, you have this packet. We're turning over to page 2. This is not the ultimate review packet for people who just showed up. This is the study guide live stream worksheet that I created specifically for this live review session. We're going to do this. We're going to switch out and jump into Unit 3. Okay, whoo! Unit 3. If there's one thing that freaks people out about microeconomics, it's the cost curves. Calculating costs, they see all these dollars, and they like, if you miss that lecture in your class, your professor doesn't talk, you miss that, you slept in that day, you're going to be like, what? You show up the next day, you're like totally lost. I've got some videos that explain cost curves. There's 3 in a row. It's, I think it's 3.1, 3.2, 3.2, 3, something like that in my playlist for microeconomics. You want to practice those and watch those videos. For now, I'm assuming that you understand and feel comfortable with calculating costs and cost curves. So I'm going to jump straight into a practice question right here. It says, oh, by the way, also, I'm also skipping over, like, what are fixed costs, what are variable costs, how to calculate average total cost, how to calculate average variable cost. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I'm going to go straight to the application part, and this is what your college professional will probably do as well. They'll get straight to the, can you use the profit maximizing rule? Do you understand how to calculate marginal cost, but then use it? So what we have, and what you'll get, is some sort of situation where here's the quantity of pizzas again, here's the total cost, and it gave you some space to do some marginal cost, and it gives you some sort of scenario, if you can read. It says, assume that pizza is sold in a perfect competitive market and the current price is $12. Now, it's competitive. Perfect competitive means the price taker, and it means the price is set at $12. You can sell every single pizza for $12. Another pizza you want to sell for $12, sell it for $12. It actually creates a graph, which we'll get to later, but we're not there yet. So right now, first thing we have to do, in question 14, actually, it says calculate the profit maximizing quantity. You're going to see that question. I promise you, you're going to see that question on your final exam. It's going to be on the test. Question is, can you do it? Can you actually use the profit maximizing rule? So we start off, when we do this, by calculating the marginal cost. The very first one you can't calculate because it's the change in total cost. Your teacher, and I don't remember this in college, they did this, but they could be a jerk and have these go up by 2s or 5s. And if they do that, keep in mind, this goes up by 5 and this goes up by 10. That means the marginal cost is 2, right? Because it's the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. Now, most of the time, and I hope for in your case as well, you're going to have a college professor that has it go up by 1s. It makes it really easy. So this is the total cost change from one more output. Okay, from one more output, which makes it easy to calculate. All you're doing is subtracting. So from 20 to 30 in this case is $10. Notice I'm putting dollar signs because these are costs. From the next one is $2, then $6. This is going up. By the way, do this with me. Don't think I'm doing this on my own. In fact, I'll move it away so you can work. But next one is $7, then $10, then $15, and then $20. Marginal cost. Notice marginal cost, the numbers I have here go down and up. 10, 2, 6, 7, 10, 5, 15, 20. They go down and up just like an actual marginal cost curve that you'll be drawing in the graph later on. A lot of times your teacher doesn't ask you to plot things. I mean, if they do, that's kind of a waste of time. But you should understand that the chart should look very similar to your graph. If you have weird marginal cost that's going up and going down, then they gave you weird numbers and dumb numbers. But there it is. Now, that doesn't give us an answer. We're not trying to figure out what's the marginal cost. We're trying to use the marginal cost. We know that the price is 10. Why? Because it told us. And you have to have that information. So now we're going to use the most important rule in all of microeconomics. MR equals MC, the profit maximizing rule. It's so important. The idea is you produce where the MR equals MC without the MC going over. So if the price of a pizza was $12, would you produce the first one if it cost you 10? Of course. Next one? Yeah. Next one? Yes, yes, yes. I would keep producing up to the 5th pizza. I would never produce the 6th pizza because it cost me $15 to produce that additional pizza, but the revenue is only additional $12, right? I'm not going to produce something if it costs me more to produce that additional unit than the additional revenue I can get for it. So the quantity, profit maximizing quantity right here is 5, I'll write units of pizzas. And then the reason why, the AP test and your college professor will probably ask you why or explain. It's because MR equals MC, the profit maximizing rule. All right, now I did throw in question 15. Do you understand how to calculate the average total cost? Really quickly, calculate the average total cost. I feel like I'm doing too much for you. So if you work ahead of me and then watch, that's fine too. But right now, go ahead and do number 15 on your own. Calculate the average total cost. This is an easy one. All right, so it seems like alphabet soup when you're looking at all these different things. The average total cost, the average variable cost, the average fixed cost. These seem like, oh geez, how am I keep it all straight? It's all the same equation. Average total cost is the total cost divided by quantity. Average variable cost is the variable cost divided by quantity. Average fixed cost is the fixed cost divided by quantity. In this case, you have the total cost. It was given. Total cost, we know the quantity, you just got it. It's 5, right? So if the average total cost, or the total cost is 55, and the quantity is 5, then the average total cost must be 11. Now, hopefully your college professor gives you nice whole numbers. Here's a hint, and I mean this for all your classes, particularly with your stats class and other things. If your college professor ever tells you, hey, listen, in fact, I'll transition out of graph mode so you can hear me. If your college professor ever says, you know what, you guys can decide, you want to do calculators on this test, or do you guys not want to do calculators? Don't do calculators! Calculators make it twice as hard. You'll get weird and difficult numbers, and your professor will purposely give you hard numbers. So if you have the choice, which most time you don't, keep in mind, just don't have a calculator. Don't. If you can have a calculator if they let you use one, obviously. But if it's a choice, you don't want the calculator because then they'll ask harder questions with weird numbers. Okay, so that was average total cost. I could ask you a bunch of questions for other things if I wanted to. I could say, okay, what about average variable cost or calculate the average fixed cost? Again, I did that in the practice video for microeconomics inside the unit playlist. So go ahead and watch those videos to practice more calculations. Right now, let's go actually use this and calculate profit. So calculate profit. Profit is the total revenue minus the total cost. We know the quantity. We already got it. Quantity we said was, quantity is 5. Now, so total revenue is 5 times the quantity of 5 times 12, right? It's 12 is the amount of the price, right? I'll put a dollar, so that's price. So it's $60 is the total revenue, right? So $60 is the total revenue, but that doesn't tell us the profit. We know the cost is 55 because that was given, which is right there. So 60 minus the 55 gave you $5 of profit. All right, $5 of profits being made. There it is. That's the right answer to that. Again, what you just saw, the skill of calculating marginal cost, identifying how many units to produce, calculating profit or total revenue or total cost, that is going to be on your test every single time, every time on a final. Usually in a multiple choice question, they'll give you this chart and say, okay, which quantity is a quantity that's maximizing profit. Be able to do it. Another graph you'll see, depending on your class and your course, is right here, side-by-side graphs for perfect competition. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to draw this graph. I want to draw it for you, but I don't. You've got to do it. So right now, take out a piece of paper. If you didn't already print out this live stream review session handout, draw side-by-side graphs for this firm. This firm's making profit, which we just said. Don't actually draw in the numbers. Don't put in box of profit and the quantity and label that. Just label in general. So the market, let's just do PM and QM. In fact, I'll write that down. For the market, put in PM and QM. And for the firm, which we'll put on the right-hand side, let's go ahead and put QF and PF just to keep things simple. Do you know what I'm saying? And the reason why is I don't want you to have these numbers. I don't want someone to try to plot all the numbers. So the marginal cost is 10 and 2, and the marginal cost is 6. That's not what we're doing right now. I'm trying to help you understand what you need for a test. So a market, a firm making a profit, and then it says what happens in the short run and the long run. So draw it in the short run, making profit, and then what's going to happen in the long run. Then I'm going to go over both of those things and show you what happens and why it happens. But you probably don't even need me because you can do it yourself, right? Can you? Can you draw it yourself? Let's find out. I'm going to go check out the comments, but don't type. You should not be typing. Vineeth just asked, when's the macro live stream? The macro live stream is tomorrow, Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, because I'm here in San Diego, California, in the USA. So macro will be then. I'll have the same sort of thing. I'll have a printout. So if you're on your phone, maybe that time jump on a laptop and download the PDF live stream review session worksheet for that one. And we'll go over several concepts as well. I'm usually in the chat like a couple minutes ahead of time, like 20, 30 minutes ahead of time. So if you have questions, let me know in the chat for macro as well ahead of time. It'd be super helpful for me to know what to help teach you guys. Do me a favor though, let me know if this is helping you and if you're enjoying the show. FaceTime questions with Mr. Oh, you're in Jaeger's class. Ryan, you guys are in Jaeger's class? Someone just said I'm hot. Well, thank you.
You're hot too.
You know what, Mr. Jaeger's class, maybe I'll open up the FaceTime again at the very end. We might actually go overtime for people who want to. I hear, I love your teaching. Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate it. You remember, if you're reading don't do that. You should be doing the graph. I want showing a market and a firm making profit, and then showing what happens in the long run. This thing will be posted on YouTube, so everyone have access. So if you want to watch it later, that's fine. Or go back and watch it, that's fine as well. You are helping. Yes. Jasmine, yes. Very helpful. Ryan says yes. Ryan's on top of it for the whole Jaeger class, huh? Are there any other students that are in a class right now with your teacher? Trevor says, I know nothing. Thanks for your help, Mr. Clifford. Seriously, you are welcome. Please, hey, Trevor, subscribe. Make sure to subscribe. Shout out to Bob Bowl. Is that Bowl? B-O-U-L, Jasmine? Bowl? No, we're not done. No, we're not done. Oh, you are done. Oh, I see. I thought you said we're done with the review session. We're not done with the review session. Okay, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's draw this puppy. You're going to be asked to draw this. Notice the beginning is something you already know. One of the tips I always tell people, no matter what, draw something. Sometimes people go, I don't remember monopolistic competition. Or I remember something. Draw whatever you do know, because that will get you some points along the way. It's the ugliest supply curve I've ever drawn in my entire life. Here's the supply curve. Over. There's the price at equilibrium. Here's the quantity. I'm going to put quantity at M for market, because that's what I told you to do. So quantity, market, and price for market. Here's price. Here's quantity. That's the market. This is the firm. This is a whole new concept. Now we're analyzing an individual firm inside a giant market. They are a price taker. So the most important thing is ... over that price. That price F gives you a horizontal demand, which equals the marginal revenue, also called Mr. DARP. Right here. That Mr. DARP, you understand from before, is 12, right? That's what we said is 12. I'm not going to label it 12, but you understand it's 12. Every single unit can be sold for $12. They are a price taker. They got to take the price. They have identical products. They have many small firms competing against each other. There's low barriers to entry. If somebody's making profit, other firms will enter. So there's your marginal revenue. It's supposed to be horizontal. It's ugly, but it is. Your marginal cost goes down and up. Boom, which is there. The numbers prove that concept. We don't need to plot them, but you got it. And you know where to produce. You produce where MR equals MC, which we already said was quantity 5, which we'll just call quantity F for our purposes. There it is. Now notice, I do not need a average total cost curve to figure out the quantity to produce. A lot of students want to draw ATC first. No, dude. MC, demand, draw this. Even if you're drawing a loss, draw this first and draw the ATC at the end so you don't start messing yourself up. Now, we do know the firm's making profit because we already calculated it. That means ATC is going to go down. It's going to hit a minimum, and it's going to go back up looking like that. I'll call it ATC. Now, if you kept your ATC below demand curve, that's fine if it's down here, if it's not as curvy as mine. What I want to do, though, really quickly, because I can and because you're watching, is the price down to the ATC is the profit box. So make sure you can draw and know where a profit box is, which I'll lightly shade in because I have more things to do on this graph. But that idea is the profit box. Your college professor will likely ask you a question about that idea. Can you draw a market and a firm in the short run making a profit? Boom, that's it. This is all called the theory of the firm, which reminds me, kind of like the production possibilities curve, which we said is kind of a useless graph, a graph that, you know, people don't really use. It's not used by anybody. Nobody in the world sells units ever has drawn this graph in a firm. You're like, oh, there's our marginal revenue. They're concepts, they're a theory, they're an idea. People use this stuff all the time, but they don't actually draw the graphs. At least I run a business and I don't draw these actual graphs. The concepts we use all the time though, right? And that's why you're actually learning them. But we're not done. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm switching to a different color pen. Let's show what happens in the long run. This is the short run because there's profit being made, but it's not going to stay there. Other firms are going to enter because there's low barriers to entry. That means over here, what's going to happen? Supply or demand. Say it out loud. Supply or demand? Supply. Supply is going to increase or shift to the right. In this case, down here, supply shifts to the right. Firms are going to enter. I'll call it PM1 and QM1. And they're going to lower that price because if there's profit being made. Now, obviously, $5 profit's not made, not very much, but this is all concepts, right? So this could be $5 million of profit, even though perfect competition probably wouldn't make that. But you get the idea. There's profit being made. If you saw your neighbor making profit, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to jump in there too and make some profit as well. That means they're going to take that new price, let's call it PF1, and it's going to go very important right here. Not there. Look carefully. Not there. It's going to go right here at the point of minimum ATC. That down, QF1, represents the new quantity. That's the demand equals the marginal revenue 1. And there it is. So what happened to the profit? Well, it disappears. Profit disappears. And now we end up with a long-run equilibrium where the average total cost hits the marginal cost right where the demand hits the marginal revenue. That's the idea. Now, how much profit are they making? Well, there's two types of profit. You remember this concept? It's not a question asked here, but your test is going to ask you that. Your college professor is going to ask you a question because it's a huge idea. This idea was called normal profit. Normal profit means they're making no economic profit. Normal profit means they are breaking even in the long run. This is the idea of they're covering all of their costs to produce, and they're covering their opportunity costs. So if you think about this, and every year someone's like, well, I don't get it. Why would a firm, produce if they're not making any profit? They are making profit, but they're not making economic profit. So this is zero economic profit. They are making no profit above their opportunity cost. So they're covering their costs. They're covering the money they would have made doing some other job, but they're not making any money above that. If they were making money above that, other people would enter. And if they're making less money than that, they would go do that other job. So breaking even in the long run is this idea of long run equilibrium, also called normal profit or zero economic profit. In fact, I'll write zero because that looks weird. Zero economic profit. Okay? Cool. Something else you might see is the idea of accounting profit. They are making accounting profit. So at PF1, this firm is making accounting profit. How much is that? I don't know. We're not accountants. We don't care. We do know that they're making accounting profit, but they're making zero economic profit. Okay, that's perfect competition. Again, I totally left out a bunch of stuff, particularly about cost curves, the whole first half. We drew some cost curves here, but you should be able to use the cost curves. So if I gave you a cost curve, you'd be able to calculate average total cost, average variable cost, average fixed cost off the cost curves, or know how they shift. That might be another thing you have to be able to actually do. But the biggest concepts are the ones right here. Keep in mind what we did. We did chart practice, which is can you use the profit maximizing rule? And then we did graph practice. Can you draw side-by-side graphs and show what happens in the short run and in the long run? And there it is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on to my favorite graph. And boy, isn't she a beaut? Monopoly graph. So there are 4 market structures. You learn this in your class. Perfect competition. There is monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly. You got to know those concepts, know those 4 market structures. We covered perfect competition here. Now we're talking about monopoly. The other 2 with game theory for oligopolies is important. I might not cover it in today's review session, but that's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, right now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go look at some of the comments and go through there. What I want you to do is I want you to answer these questions. So I don't know if I can do this. In fact, I will try my best to do this. It would be nice if I could hide myself so you could not see me, so you can actually work on this. Give me like 4 seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2. I don't know how to do it. That's okay. So you need that graph. I guess there's only here. I guess I can zoom out and you can kind of like look at your computer a little more. Okay. Here's what it says. Yeah. Here's what it says. Monopoly practice, use graph to answer the questions. You've got this Monopoly, which is right here. For the people who have on your phones, you got to squint your eyes. Identify the profit maximizing price and quantity. Calculate the total revenue at the profit maximizing price and quantity, and calculate the total cost. So those are the first questions. Profit, total revenue, and total cost. I'm going to zoom in because it's going to be easier. Just trust me. I'm going to zoom in so you can actually see, and then you can answer the rest of the questions, which will be right there. Okay? So, profit maximizing quantity, total revenue, total cost, and profit. And then answer the questions about socially optimal and other things. And I will go and look at the comment section. A, Natalie from Mr. Goss's class. Listen, I feel bad. I wanted to come and review with you guys up there in northern Kentucky. Do me a favor, and I mean this. It's going to sound weird. Give Mr. Goss a hug for me. I'm a hugger, tell the truth. So give him a hug for me, like not like this moment, go find him. But when you get back in class and say, that's from Mr. Clifford. Unless you don't like him, there's some sort of weird thing going there. Maybe ask some guy to do it. I don't know, whatever. But say hi to him and let him know that I felt bad I wasn't able to come to a review session and review with you guys this year. I'll see if I can do it next year. But you guys are awesome. I came last year and met a lot of students at your school. Your school was awesome. Mr. Baker from California. Barbie, I'm glad that you're here. Mr. Baker. Someone asked about the Clep exam. The Clep exam, all my videos really cover that really well. I've had several students who've come back to me and told me that Clep was basically exactly the same as the AP test in an introductory micro course. So definitely super helpful for you guys. I love the fact that many of you guys are graphing right now. Somebody's watching this from Boston. That's awesome. I'm glad you're a huge fan. It's weird to think that I have fans. What else we got here? I'm not sure what Kaiser is. Someone said I should come to Kaiser. I don't know what that is. Oh, Jack asked about the shutdown rule. So really, as you're graphing and you're answering these questions, I'm just going to talk. The shutdown rule is the idea that you're making a loss that's so big that you're losing more money than your fixed costs. And why that matters is if I just shut down, if I shut down, I got to pay my fixed costs no matter what. So I got to pay rent no matter what. So $1,000 a month, I got to pay rent on, my restaurant. And if I start making a loss each month that's greater than $1,000, well, I should just shut down, pay my $1,000 rent as opposed to lose $2,000 by staying open. So the shutdown rule conceptually is the idea of you shut down if your costs become too big and you have a loss. But graphically, it's where price hits the AVC. If the price falls below the average variable cost, you shut down. I heard shout out from Florida, New York. I love it. New York here from David. Somebody's asking about the AP test, particular gains from trade. It has been asked. The gains of trade, what we did earlier with the low world market price, that has been asked in the AP test in the years past. But only like 2 fair responses. Again, I'm not going to focus on the AP test. Remember, in this video, I'm not focusing on the AP test as much as I'm focused on college course and microeconomics in general. Macros tomorrow, and then the weekend before the actual AP test, I'll be doing another set of live review sessions to help people get ready for the AP test, and I'll give you my predictions on what I think the free responses are and all that stuff. London, like Ontario, or like London, England? Zoltan, where are you from? Mr. Flory from Powell, Idaho is a huge fan. Hey, do me a favor, say hi to Mr. Flory from me. We have a question about game theory for the FaceTime with Mr. Yeager. Okay, Smitty here, New Jersey, Tampa, Florida, Alex. Hey, like I said, I can't give everybody a shout out, but let's jump into these questions and go from there. And here we go. In 3, 2, 1. First of all, I hope. Oh, let me back up. I hope so much that this is helpful in helping you guys. This is it's been fun working with you. We're not done, but take a mental break here. Let's cover Monopoly. Make sure you understand how to do it, and you've got it. So here we go. All right. So, all right, we're jumping into the graph. I'm going to keep the graph on the page and then right over on the side and maybe move it over later on. So let me move this down a little bit, just like that. So here we go. Identify the profit maximizing price and quantity. You produce where MR equals MC. It might help you on your test if the teacher gives you the graph. By the way, there's two ways the teachers ask this. They either give you the graph or they make you draw the graph. In this case, they gave you the graph, which is awesome. We're going to call that 7. So, well, first of all, yeah, quantity I'll put here. Quantity equals 7 because that's 7, which is right here. Right? But the price is not, don't say 4, it's up to the demand curve. And we're going to call that demand curve up, and that is $10. So the price is 10, right, up to the demand curve right here, right? So I'll put a dot right there. That represents the price. And the reason why, if you're wondering, is the price is what people are willing to pay for something. If you're, if you're stopping production at 7, why would you charge them 4 if they're willing to pay $10, right? You're a monopoly. You're a single, firm in the market. You're going to charge them $10. So yeah, there's that. So that was the price and quantity. Since we have the price and quantity, we can calculate the total revenue, right? Total revenue, price, and quantity is multiplied times each other. So that gives you $70. $70 is the big box right here. I'm not going to draw and label it. I could. Nah, I'm not going to. I'll just do the profit later on. But it's the price times the quantity of the big revenue box. The total cost, well, you go up from 7 to the ATC. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's easy for students to mess up. For sometimes they go here. They go, oh, yeah, the marginal cost is 4. No, the average cost is 4. The cost is 4. They get confused. You got to go up to get the ATC, not the marginal cost. So there it is, and that's 6. So 6 times 7 is 42 is the total cost. And the profit is the difference between them, and that is $28, which is the profit. I'm leaving off any equations here, but it's the total revenue minus the total cost. Do me a favor, with your pen, on your graph, please label that box of profit. Actually shade that box of profit in right now, if you can. So here we go. It is the price down to the ATC and over, and there it is. Okay. Now you got that done. There's your box of profit. I want you to do me a favor. Shade in the deadweight loss. The what? The deadweight loss. Where's the deadweight loss that exists here? Because we're not producing the quantity socially optimal. Now notice, to answer that, you have to actually know the quantity socially optimal to figure out deadweight loss. Those things go together. Remember, we circled them in those graphs we did earlier, right? So where's deadweight loss? Well, we're socially optimal first. Well, socially optimal is right here. It's where the marginal cost hits the demand curve, which I'll put a big dot. That's what society wants. Society is saying, listen, here's the benefit, here's the cost. We want more, we want more, we want more. Stop, produce here. Don't produce anything beyond it because it costs more than we benefit. Costs more than we benefit. Costs more than we benefit. You don't want that. You want to produce here. But society, or in this case the monopoly, is not producing there. Monopoly is producing here at 7. So why aren't they producing what society wants? Because they're a monopoly. They're deciding to underproduce and produce less output. And so this giant triangle on my graph is all dead weight loss. That is dead weight loss. And notice it's pointing toward socially optimal, just like we saw before, and it's back with a vengeance. We want more, we want more, we want more. Monopoly, society is saying we want more, produce more output. So socially optimal, question 22 to answer the question was 10. You should know why it's 10. It's not just a random guess. Identify the price and quantity where total revenue is maximized. Ooh, this is not where profit is maximized, where total revenue is maximized. This is 9. This is where the MR equals 0. So where MR hits 0, which is down here, if you remember this idea, and I kind of left it out because I went so fast in Unit 2, the idea of elasticity and the total revenue test. If you remember, when the price goes down and total revenue goes up, that's the idea of elastic, right? Elastic demand curve, price goes up. If you remember, if you had a total revenue curve under here, total revenue would go up, hit a peak right here, and then go back down. And the reason why, first of all, if the marginal revenue is falling, right, that total revenue is going up at a decreasing rate because the marginal revenue is the derivative of the total revenue curve, for those of you who like calculus. So this actually separates the graph into 2 pieces. And these 2 pieces represent the elastic range from the inelastic range. I'm running just letters E and I, because on the other side, the price is going down and total revenue is going down, and that's called inelastic. And one of the questions your professor might ask, or your teacher might ask is like, where is a monopoly going to produce? The elastic, the inelastic range. Well, they're always going to produce in the elastic range. Like there would be no incentive to produce here because you could raise the price and get more revenue. So you can actually raise the price and make more money than before. Why would you ever lower it beyond that? So that doesn't make any sense. So there's the elastic range, like I said, and the inelastic range of the demand curve, which answers the last question. Price number at 12. Price at 12 is in the elastic range of the demand curve. Now, the monopoly, like I said, when it comes to Unit 4, monopoly is just one of the many things that you need to know in Unit 4. So a monopoly graph, you got to be able to draw it. So if I asked you to draw it by yourself right now, could you, without obviously just looking at the paper you just had, could you label consumer surplus? In fact, let's go do that real quick. Back to graph mode. Graph mode! The consumer surplus is right here, right? The difference what they're willing to pay, what they did pay is right there. So the concepts you saw in other units, you're actually seeing over again. Obviously you'll get that. You'll get a question maybe about price discrimination. In an introductory econ class, you usually just get first degree price discrimination. But there's also second and third degree, which we're not going to cover here, obviously. But the idea of what I'm trying to show you is most of the things for Monopoly are actually covered here, except for to be able to draw it yourself. There's also, like I said, price discrimination, and then regulating Monopoly with socially optimal and fair return with putting a price ceiling to keep the price from going up. You might learn that in Unit 6 when you talk about how the government solves the idea of market failures. In Unit 4, you're also going to see two other main concepts: monopolistic competition, which is literally the same exact graph, exactly the same demand, marginal revenue, and then then average total cost that goes right here. It goes goes down, hits this, keeps going down, then goes back up. That's monopolistic competition in the long run. And so basically it's more of a graph and a concept to understand what monopolistic competition is. And then oligopoly has the idea of game theory, if you've done game theory in your class, with finding the dominant strategy and the Nash equilibrium, which is actually pretty cool stuff. And if you saw my video about it, you got it, you understand it. And if you've done the practice questions or the review questions in the ultimate review packet, then you're fine. Hey, do me a favor, if you haven't done so right now, hit that subscribe button. Let me know if this is a good show and you're enjoying it. I'm going to go back to the comments really quick and find out what you guys have to say. So keep in mind what we've done. We've covered Unit 1 and Unit 2. Not all of it, but some big chunks of it. We've done Unit 3 and Unit 4. We're about to do Unit 5, and then we'll do some more stuff. You'll see. We'll actually practice some more graphing. Somebody asked, is Lorenz curve is more macro? Is it not? The Lorenz curve is usually a micro concept. It's usually in Unit 6. It's a concept that shows how income is distributed. When MR equals 0, would that exact point be unelastic? Yes. Trevor asked, what about the graph we just did? In fact, let me pull it up. The graph we just did, graph mode. Try again. That was a false start. Graph mode, where the MR hits 0, that's actually elastic. So elastic, unelastic, and then inelastic. It gets more complicated at more you learn. But yes, for our purposes, yes. Trevor, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. I've subscribed for a year now. Thank you, Zoltan. You're awesome as well. Okay, so right now we're switching over to Unit 5. Where we talk about resources, and you're going to find out, you're going to see a skill in Unit 5 and some graphs in Unit 5 that you have comfort with because you've done similar things as well with them. So here we go. Right now, let's open up open it up to Unit 5, which is going to look like this. So here we go. For the people who are just showing up, we've got in the description of this video, there is a download where you can download this worksheet that we're filling out along the way to help you guys practice. Unit 5, hiring workers, we're going to do right now. I want you to notice how hiring workers is very similar to perfect competition producing output. If you look at these charts, they're different concepts totally. I mean, this one's quantity of pizzas, this one's quantity of workers, but the idea is exactly the same, particularly when it comes to marginal analysis. So right now what I want you to do is figure it out and try it on your own. It says, assume that workers are hired at a perfect competitive labor market. The product price is $2. Now when it says product price, it's talking about the price of the product they're producing. And then it says the wage is $10 and the fixed cost is $22. So with that information, you got to figure out the marginal product, the marginal revenue product, the marginal resource cost. How many workers should you hire? And calculate the profit or loss. And then we'll draw a graph and talk about minimum wage that goes on that graph as well. Okay? So right now, go ahead and get ahead of me as much as you can. At the very least, let's go ahead and fill out the marginal product. So let's do that, and we'll do it together. The marginal product, right here. Again, notice this is not dollars. I think that's super important to understand. When we talk about production, and I skipped over this in Unit 3, we talk about production and the law of diminishing marginal returns. We're not talking about dollars at all. We're not talking about how much costs are at all. That comes later. We're just talking about when workers produce stuff, the relationship between inputs and outputs, the idea of productivity. So marginal product is, you don't know for the the 0 one, but for the first one, we hired one worker, goes from 0 to 10, that's 10. Again, remember, I mentioned this before, if this goes up by, 2, if it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, you've got to make sure to adjust for that, because in this case, the marginal product is the change in total product divided by the change in quantity of inputs, in this case, workers. But it's going up by 1 in this case, so you're fine. Next one is going to be 30, and then it's going to go up by 20, and then 10, and then 6, 4, and 2. Look at those numbers. Notice how marginal product, first of all, notice how total product is going up, but not at a constant rate. When you hire more inputs, you don't get the same amount of output over and over again. Okay, 10 more output, 10 more output, 10 per output, because the law of diminishing marginal returns and because of limited resources. So there's limited fixed resources. What happens is you hire more workers, you get more and more output. You get this idea of specialization, but eventually each worker produces less and less additional output, which is what we're seeing in the actual numbers. It doesn't look like this in real life, honestly. Don't freak out about this, but when you hire workers, you don't exactly know their marginal product. This is all theory. Microeconomics is theory to help us understand concepts, and those concepts you'll use in real life. We're not done. We got to actually use all this information. This information here is actually super important. We've got a product price of 2, a wage of 10, and a fixed cost of 22. All right, here we go. We have to calculate the marginal revenue product. I didn't give you a column because I wanted you to know, okay, there's other things you got to calculate. Marginal revenue product is the value of those workers. How much revenue do you generate for my company, right? So this worker adds an additional 10 output for the company, and I can sell each one of them for $2. So they bring in $20 of revenue. Notice now I'm bringing in the dollar sign. Before, there's no dollars here, but now I'm bringing in dollar signs because this represents money. The next one brings in $60. Next one brings in 40. That was the worst 4 ever. Next one brings in 20. Next one brings in 12. Next one brings in 8. Next one brings in 4. Marginal revenue product is the marginal product, we just calculated this one, times the price when it's perfect competition. So they say it was a perfect competitive, at least it said the product price is set, which means there's a market price. This is perfect competition. So that tells you the marginal revenue product is the price times the marginal product. That tells us how much we're willing to pay these workers. The very first worker, I'm willing to pay up to $20. I'm not going to pay him $20. I'm going to pay him what his equilibrium wage is, but that's what I'd be willing to pay him. The third worker, I'd be willing to pay up to $40 because that's what they generate for my company, but I'm not going to pay him $40. I'm going to pay him what their wage is set by the market, which we already said is 10. If the wage is 10, that gives you the idea of how to calculate how many workers you should hire. I'm definitely going to hire that first worker. Oopsie. I'm going to hire that first worker. Second worker, third, fourth, fifth, yes. Sixth, nope. The answer on this one was 5 workers. I'm going to hire 5 workers, which would maximize my my benefit, my profit. And this is the marginal revenue product equals the marginal resource cost. And I left this out, but the marginal resource cost is that wage. That's the additional cost of one more worker. So you hire 5 workers because you hire where MRP equals MRC. Depending on your professor, your teacher, they might call this the value of marginal product, but I call it marginal revenue product. Either term works. Next step, we got to calculate that profit. So right now, calculate that profit. You know you're hiring 5 workers. It tells you how much output you're producing, and you know your fixed cost is 22. So make sure to factor that in as well. Calculate that profit as I take a sip of water. Again, I try to use whole numbers here to make it relatively easy-ish. You got it? Now, I know it seems like I'm rushing through these things, and maybe I am, but the truth is, like, these are skills you got to be kind of good at and fast at as over time. So profit is total revenue minus total cost. First, we got to start off with the total revenue. The total revenue is first of all, we know we're producing 76, right? So 76 total product. We're not producing 5. Oh, you can't see that. You're not producing 5 output. We're producing 76 output. So we are selling each one for $2. So the $2 price times 76 is $152 of revenue coming in to the company. We've got to subtract out those costs. In this case, there's 2 costs. First, there's the labor costs, which we hired 5 workers for $10 each, which is $50, right? Plus, there's another fixed cost, which was given, which was $22, and that's $22 of fixed costs. Because your total cost, remember, your total cost is your variable cost plus your fixed cost, which gives you a grand total of $80 profit. There's your answer. $80 profit is the amount of profit that is made when you hire 5 workers, and it's the most amount of profit, right? The profit maximizing rule is a way of figuring out, okay, if I did the calculations for all these and calculated the profit for every single one of these, 80 would be the most amount of profit I could possibly make. That concept also applies to what we did in Unit 3. So these are these concepts again, right? We said quantity 5 pizzas back in Unit 3. That's the most profit you can make, was $5 profit. No other unit would do it. You could make profit maybe for producing the 6th one, but it won't be maximized. Same here. I might actually make profit by hiring the 6th worker, but that doesn't mean I'm maximizing profit, and that's what the profit maximizing rule does. It makes sure you have the most profit. Okay, now we're switching off to graph mode, and we're going to draw side-by-side graphs. It says draw side-by-side graphs for a market and a firm. Show what happens when there's a minimum wage of $15. I want you to draw, man, just like we did before with perfect competition in the product market. We're doing perfect competition in the resource market. And this one we have wage, quantity, and quantity. Leave off all the numbers, so don't have wage $10, but just keep it W1 and stuff like that. So go ahead and label what it looks like, and then a market and a firm, and then show what happens with a minimum wage on that graph. Okay, go for it. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. Downward sloping demand curve. In the labor market, just remember the demand is by firms. The firm's the ones demanding, they're not supplying. That's what switches. And over here, you've got a supply curve. This is supplying by individuals who are willing to supply their labor. And if you dot over, that is the wage, we'll say E at equilibrium, and quantity E. It's the same darn supply and demand graph that you drew before, and you already know that concept because you draw supply and demand like 80 times. You also have to take that wage over because this is a wage taker. In this case, perfect competition, you got to take that wage. If this wage, let's just say is $10, which it is, I'll put $10. You've got to take that $10 wage. Remember, this is not selling, this is not products. We're not analyzing product, we're analyzing labor. It would be the same thing if you're analyzing capital or if we're analyzing some other resource. So this wage is a horizontal curve, which is the supply, which equals the marginal resource cost. That is the marginal resource cost. The additional cost of each worker is $10. Another worker costs $10. Another worker is the wage, $10. Now, this is where things get tricky. You're so used to drawing certain graphs, like, I don't know, maybe that one, that you're tempted to be like, oh, marginal cost goes up, ATC, that don't work. That's not how it works. If you look at the numbers you just made, the marginal revenue product, that would tell you, it will remind you, what does the marginal revenue product look like when you're hiring workers? Well, it's 20, 60, 40, 20, 12, 8, 4. What's it doing? Well, it's going up and it's going down. Now, you don't necessarily need the section where it's going up. I put it on there anyways, but you don't. Same thing for marginal cost. You don't have a marginal cost, the part where it's going down. You don't necessarily need that. But here we go. This is demand equals the marginal revenue product. The first worker I was willing to pay $20. Next worker I want to pay $60. Next one I was willing to pay, I'll put move so you can see with me, $40, then 20, then 12, then 8, then 4. So I'm just basically plotting those, but not really plotting them. This represents where I'm going to hire. We already know the number was 5, but I'll put quantity for the firm is right here. Where's the ATC? There is none. There is really no box of profit. You can show profit in a way, but there's no box of profit. You're not expected to do other things right here. That's the graph. That's the concept. But we weren't done. It is now trying to show what minimum wage looks like. So we're going to put together what we did all the way back in Unit 2 when we had a floor, except now we're going to show it here in Unit 5 with supply and demand with wages. The government comes in and says, listen, you can't pay people $10. It's against the law. You got to pay them $15, which we'll put that with the wage floor. And I'll draw a horizontal line through both graphs to make it simple, right? This gives us a new quantity. This quantity, I'll put quantity 1, is the new quantity of workers actually hired. Yes, there'll be more supply. There'll be more people who want to supply their labor, but at the high wage, firms aren't going to hire them. Why? Because supply and demand, right? In this case, this graph's going to tell you more. There's the wage with the floor. This is the supply 1 equals the marginal resource cost of 1, and each firm is going to hire less workers, right? Which makes sense using the actual numbers as well. If the wage was 15, well, I couldn't hire the 5th worker anymore. I now hire only 4 workers, not because I'm a jerk, not because I don't want to help them, but just they're not bringing in the value to my business like they could have. And like they did before, because I now have to pay them more. So over here, let's go back to this graph. I want you to notice it's the same thing you drew earlier. In this case, we have a surplus, but a surplus of labor is called unemployment. So this is the amount of workers who are unemployed, who want a job, but who are not working. This quantity here represented those workers who were fired, right? So these are the people who worked before, and now we're hiring less workers. Well, guess what? You got fired, and more people jumped in that labor market at a higher wage. They got off their couch. They wanted to actually go work, and then we ended up with this surplus. This surplus of labor. The quantity supplied of workers is greater than the quantity demanded because the wage is so darn high. Okay, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Is it making sense? I hope it does. That is the idea of a market and a firm in a competitive resource market. The one thing I'm missing in this whole unit, there's 2 things I'm missing. The least cost rule, which you might see with your professor, your teacher might give you, and the idea of a monopsony, which is a monopoly for labor. One of the things I do want to show you, though, is, and again, I might have to zoom out to be able to see it. I go into some depth in my videos explaining this thing. When you look at these 2 graphs, if you kind of think of what's going on here, the cool thing is this. Supply and demand is supply and demand. You know that. That graph's easy. This one, it's got to keep in your brain which one's which. This is literally a flipped version of that one. So if you were to flip your piece of paper, upside down and look at it, like, oh, look at that. That's exactly what it looks like. Instead of the marginal revenue product goes up and down, that's like the marginal cost going down and up. And they're both being connected by the same law, the law of diminishing marginal returns. The point, though, is you're using also the same skills. Just remember, in this case, there's a horizontal demand curve, and this one, the horizontal supply curve. This is a price taker. This one's a wage taker. And you're still using this idea of marginal analysis. I continue to produce as long as the revenue, additional revenue, is greater than the additional cost. And I continue to hire as long as the additional revenue that each worker generates is above the additional cost of hiring that worker. So the concepts and the skills are the same. They're a little different, but the same stuff. And that's like the definition of microeconomics. It's like all the same stuff that's related. Think about what we've been doing this whole darn time, right? It's all stuff kind of interrelated with different ways of showing it, right? The only one that really doesn't fit is Unit 1, right? Unit 1, the comparative advantage and this kind of stuff doesn't really fit things we've done, but all of Units 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all doing different variations of supply and demand with consumer and produced surplus and this idea of marginal analysis, right? Those are the main concepts. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Let's go back over to regular mode like this and let's look at the comments. Let me know. This is the time to tell me what you guys need, what you want to see more of. Keep in mind, I am doing another live stream review the weekend before the AP test, so I will not talk about my explicit predictions of the AP test. I will do that then. I mean, today I'm not going to tell you what I think on the AP test, the fear responses, but I will do that on before the AP test and that other session. Keep in mind that other session is for students who have the Ultimate Review Packet. If you haven't gotten the Ultimate Review Packet, it's really awesome. I just put it onto an online portal that's absolutely amazing. That gives you more access. If you have my old version, it's still good. Don't feel bad, and you'll still have access to the to the live stream I'll be doing in 2 weeks as well. So don't freak out. You'll have access to it. Just go to where you normally watch videos and normally access videos in the Ultimate Review Packet. On the new version with the online portal, all you got to do is go to the last section I added in there, and there's a PDF that has the link so you can actually see it. Some people are asking, I need to review externalities. David, we already did that with negative externalities back in Unit 2, so you maybe go back and watch the video. Somebody else, Barbie's asking about monopsonies. Monopsonies are actually not that valuable. In terms of like the thing your teacher's going to ask you about. Like, it's not like the most important thing ever. And you know, some people say monopsonies would be helpful to learn. Really, I'm not going to cover it only because if you're feeling good with this stuff, that's a good place to start. Then you can start picking off those little tiny things that you're not sure about. Somebody said, I love you, Mr. Clifford. I love you too. Shifters of demand and supply. I got videos that explain that. Again, I don't want to shoot you guys down. I know I'm asking you guys for what to cover, and then I tell you, oh no, I'm not going to cover that. I'm not going to cover that. Trevor said, Mr. Clifford, I literally picked up the concept so quickly with you. The way I know this, I do practice multiple choice videos and ace them because you make it so freaking obvious. Thank you. I appreciate it. Freaking obvious. I'll take a freaking obvious whenever I can. Somebody asked me about elasticity. Elasticity is actually pretty darn important. You're going to see some good questions about elasticity. I made a video. It's the elasticity practice video. You got to watch that one. I think I put it in the Ultimate Review Packet. It might only be inside that, but it's free in the free version of the Ultimate Review Packet. So take a look at elasticity because you have to be able to calculate the elasticity of demand coefficient. Sometimes, or they use the total revenue test. It's not hard. It's definitely not hard math per se, but it's just one of those things that you got to feel comfortable with. And it's something I did not cover here graphically today in our review session. Here's what I'm going to do. So many things you guys want to know about. Mr. Teacher swears by you. My teacher swears by you and basically supplied the whole class with the Ultimate Review Packet. Temperance S, did you make sure did your teacher pay for that Ultimate Review Packet they supplied? By the way, if you don't know what the Ultimate Review Packet is, it's this awesome resource that'll help you learn, and I sell it as a discount, at a bulk discount to schools. If your teacher is giving it out and you guys didn't pay and they didn't say they didn't pay, then that's that's not good at all. So you want to make sure that they did and they are. Yeah. Okay. They are paying, that is. Yeah, there's another good question about the utility maximizing rule. The reason why I'm shooting you guys down, and I guess I should just shut up and help you practice, is things like utility maximizing rule, elasticity. I made explicit videos that cover that exact concept. And so seeing me in a live review, come up with some question like randomly off the top of my head is not half as good as a video where I go, okay, now try this question, then I go over the answers. Now try this question, go over the answers. Those are the best ones. In fact, I made those for utility maximizing, for supply and demand, just regular shifters. I did that for game theory. I did one for definitely elasticity. There's a monopoly. There's an ultimate monopoly one as well. Let's do this instead. Let's go do a game theory one and practice that idea of game theory. Game theory questions all kind of start the same. And they kind of look the same. They don't start the same, but they have this game theory matrix thing. So get a piece of paper out so you can practice as I draw up one of these things. The idea is there's two firms and they're like two competing hotels, and that's what we'll have is hotel. What's a name of someone who is in our thing here? Hotel Yeet and Hotel. Hope that's not a bad word. And Hotel David. Okay, so two competing hotels. Let me switch over to graph mode. So here we go, graph mode. You've got two hotels, and you've seen this before. It's a game theory matrix. So Hotel Yeet, Hotel David. The numbers on the right are going to be Hotel David. We're going to say high and low are their options. They can either price high or low, meaning, normally they charge, let's say $100, let's say $200 for a hotel. They're a downtown hotel charging $200, and they can also sell a discount and sell it for a night for $100. So should they go high and go 200? Should they go low? Or should they go 100? And then the numbers inside here represent the profit that they would earn in these different scenarios. And I'm just making random stuff up, and let's just make it in thousands, so it makes it simple. Really, I can put any numbers I want in here, and we can just do the numbers however we want. Now, there's other ways to compete. There's like competing with location. There's other ways of competing, right? In this situation, let's do this. All right. There's some numbers. Okay, the first thing, this is ugly. This is why, now you're wondering, why the heck did you print out this thing? This is why. Look at my handwriting. I'd rather fill out something like this. Okay, anyways, so what we got here is the numbers on the left are Hotel Yeet Hotel, and the other ones are David's Hotel, right, on the numbers on the right. So one of the things I do to make things a little simpler is I circle the hotel or the whatever it is on the left, and then circle those numbers on the left. And what that does, in my brain at least, it helps me realize when I'm looking at circled ones, I'm looking at Hotel Yeet. That's what I'm looking at. That's it. That's what I want. Let me zoom in a little bit more so it's maybe easier for you to see. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. Now here's the questions you're going to get. There's 3 basic questions you're going to see, not including Nash equilibrium. First question is, can you read the chart? Like if Hotel Yeet goes high and David's Hotel goes high, how much profit will David's Hotel earn? You know, so basically it's 15. Can you read the chart? Do you understand what you're looking at? Second set of questions are, who has a dominant strategy? If Hotel Yeet does this and David Hotel does this or whatever, if they don't have the information and they just make decisions based on this, what should Hotel Yeet do? And the last one is, where's Nash equilibrium? So here's what I do, and I'm going to show you this process. First of all, let's do this. Let's do an easy question. Let's do the first one. Stick with me because I don't have it written down. If both hotels, oh, I see something. You probably would have pointed this out earlier. Look at you guys. Duh. High and low, high and low. You can't be high and high. That's stupid. Okay, so high and low, high and low. Okay, if both hotels go low, how much profit will Hotel Yeet earn? I'll say it again. If both hotels price low, how much profit will Hotel Yeet earn? The answer is $20. Okay, you can read the chart. All right, now let's find out. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let's go find out the dominant strategy for each one of these. So for Hotel Yeet, let's start with them. When it comes to dominant strategy, it's a lot easier to think of it this way, is what should they do? Let me find a paper to cover this with. So cover up, right, Hotel David. If Hotel David decides to go high, Hotel Yeet has only 2 options, go high or go low. Which one are they going to do? They'd rather have $20 or $10. Well, they'd rather have $20, which is right here. I'm going to put a star right here. I do this little star system. This helps out. And if Hotel David were to go low, well, never mind this junk. It's not Hotel David's not going high. They're going low, right? What will Hotel Yeet do? Well, they get $30 or $20. Well, they'd rather go $30. Now, because the stars align, Hotel Yeet will always price high. That is their dominant strategy. Hotel Yeet has a dominant strategy, DM, dominant strategy in pricing high, because they'll always price high. Excuse me. Okay? Okay. That's, Hotel Yeet will never, ever, ever go low. All right. Now it's time for Hotel David to figure out what he's going to do. Well, if Hotel Yeet decides to go high, what's David going to do? Well, he can either go high and get $15 or go low and get 10. What's he going to choose? Well, he'd rather have $15 than 10. Notice every year someone's like, well, isn't it better if he does this and then the other one will have less? You don't care what the other person, if you're a business, you don't care necessarily what your competitor's making. You care what you're making. Would you rather make 15 or 10? You'd rather make 15. Down here, which one would if Yeet goes low, which one would Hotel David rather have? $20 or 15? Well, he'd rather have $20, which would be right here. Now, in this case, and I happen to put these numbers in relatively random, wherever these stars line up, oh, by the way, I got to write this down. Okay. The dominant strategy, all right, DMS, dominant strategy for Hotel David is high. And if they both have a dominant strategy and high, then no doubt about it, they are going to end up both pricing high, and that's where they're going to end up. Done. Now, obviously, Hotel. I could have picked different numbers. This is why I should have actually had one picked out. A lot of times you won't have one that has a dominant strategy in both high. You'll have one that has a dominant strategy and one that doesn't have a dominant strategy. Whatever, I didn't create it this time. But the skill still is the same. Once you get to the point, you see 2 stars, that's this idea of Nash equilibrium. Nash equilibrium is the idea of where they're going to be if they both make decisions. They're going to end up following their dominant strategy. Now, if one has a dominant strategy and the other one doesn't, the one that has a dominant strategy is make a choice, and the one that doesn't have a dominant strategy is still going to pick the best thing for them, so you can still figure out where they're actually going to be. Again, this whole idea in general is the idea of game theory, a game theory matrix, and identifying dominant strategy, and then where's Nash equilibrium. Okay? Hopefully that made sense. Okay, we are winding down, but don't go anywhere yet. A couple things I want to mention really fast, really super fast. One of the things I want to mention, I know that you guys are taking many of you are taking AP Econ, or if you're in college, you're taking Poli-Sci. I also just made a resource called the AP, it's for AP students, but it's AP Gov Ultimate Review Packet, and it's really good. It has a lot of questions that will help you get ready for that test. So if you haven't taken a look at that, take a look at that if you can. I hope that this review session was super helpful. One of the things I want you to know is my YouTube channel would not exist if it wasn't for you. And hopefully you felt like you were giving back. I'm sorry that I haven't made a lot of videos lately, but I promise you I will make a whole lot more videos in the near future, particularly next year, to help students with like school stuff, but also for fun videos that talk about economics and applying this stuff. Last thing, don't go anywhere. I hope you feel this way. Econ is by far the most important concept you're ever going to take in school. It will change your life if you let it, and make your life so much better. And the reason why is the skills you learn and the concepts you learn will make you a better decision maker. And you make decisions all the time. That's all economics is. It's all about just making decisions. So regardless of all this, like, I'm not going to say junk, but regardless the stuff that you're learning for like school, regardless of all this, and can you draw this graph and do you do those calculations, that's probably not as important as understanding that this stuff actually has real application in real life. And my income personally is so much higher, and my quality of life is so much higher because I understand economics, not just the news and politics stuff, but also like when it comes to like individual decision making in my own household. Anyways, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump back into your messages and see what you guys are saying. Some people keep posting random stuff. So hopefully you weren't being jerks. I see people like debating and discussing somebody who's talking trash. Maybe please don't be that kind of person. Keep in mind, I'm going to do another live stream review. One more time, I'm going to mention this. Live stream review in 2 weeks, right before, or 3 weeks maybe, I don't know. It's right before the weekend before the AP test. I'll give you my predictions on what I think is going to be on the AP test. I'll break down the actual AP test unit by unit, talking about multiple choice questions, free response questions they've asked in previous years. And that one I'm going to focus entirely on AP. This one I try to focus more on all students who are taking your microeconomics class. Also, keep in mind, tomorrow I'm doing a macro review session where I'm going to talk about macroeconomics. Get there early and download the handout that I'll be doing for that one. On that one, I already made it earlier today. We'll be doing the idea, some unemployment practice. We'll be drawing a lot of graphs, talking the idea of the Phillips curve, aggregate demand and supply. If you only take micro, then you know what I'm talking about. But we'll be talking about a lot of graphs and doing that stuff in the macro session, which is tomorrow, same place, same time, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. I see all you guys. A lot of people saying I love you and saying thanks is so helpful. Mr. Clifford, you're the best. You are the man, Mr. Clifford. Listen, seriously, thank you guys so much for watching. We had a relatively small group watching this video because a Friday is tough, and I know it's tough spending a Friday night learning economics and practicing economics, but I hope I was able to help you out, and I love being your quasi-online teacher, and I really appreciate you guys watching my videos and getting that packet. You guys rock. So seriously, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. I hope I was able to give stuff back to you. I'll see you in the macro review session tomorrow, and I'm going to see you over in the AP exam review sessions coming up in a couple of weeks. Getting ready for those. Okay, again, thanks so much for watching. I'm going to say it right now. You ready? Until next time.